Hello, folks. It's Ted here, your boy. We're still working on the Rogue deck builder game. Been prototyping this for a while, just because I think it's kind of a more complicated sort of game concept. Lots of layers, lots of different interacting systems. So let me show you kind of where I'm at in terms of design thinking here. Okay, so I've got the game running. Um, you notice that I've got this building here that's called a repair bay. Um, that is actually just something that I am starting to toy with because I'm realizing that having the ability to repair the deck is very important. Um, it turns out that when you have this health bar concept, which we're going to talk about, suddenly having repairs becomes a necessary thing. So we ended the last stream by discussing a problem that can happen in this game, which is essentially the following. Um, it is that post holes are actually so powerful and so cheap that one is tempted to just spam post holes all over the map, right? So if I put a post hole down like so, right, or like so, then it essentially functions as a way to, as a bit of a barrier for enemies. And it's a cheap barrier for enemies. So if enemies attack this thing, or if they wanted to attack this thing, then they might get stuck attacking this thing and then this thing. And that's actually not super consequential, right? It doesn't have that big of an impact on you as you're playing because they can kind of just soak up a lot of damage. So it ends up being that that just placing a lot of post holes is a good strategy. And so we need a way to counteract that, right? Because that we don't want the gameplay to be so one-sided. We don't want the gameplay to be entirely about one strategy dominating everything, right? We don't want it to just be that you simply place a crap ton of post holes all around the deck like this, right? Just to protect it on its side. So with that, I decided it would be a good idea to add in this concept of, I don't know, like maybe psychological damage. Maybe I like to call it malding because you are a middle-aged person and you're probably balding, but also because like in games, actually the term malding comes from games. So your player character starts to mald. I'll get this turret. Your player character starts to mald when more of these post holes get destroyed. So we're actually going to do a playthrough so where you can see some of this happening, right? So if an enemy, so for every post hole in the game that gets destroyed, the player starts to mald a little bit more. Now I want to draw an actual like maldometer where you imagine like the guys, it would probably be like a player portrait here, kind of like from Doom, right? In Doom, you've got, what's his name? No, I'm thinking of Wolfenstein 3D, actually. That's BJ Blazkowicz. That's who it is. So it shows how old I am. And then there's our Doom guy, right? And you've got the face, whatever. And then like, as he gets more damaged, the face gets more bloodied, and eventually it's kind of like this. Well, in this case, it would just be a similar kind of Doom portrait, but it's his face, but he slowly starts to mald. He gets balder and balder and more mad, and then like steam starts shooting out of his ears when he's at full mald, right? Because we're early in the prototyping stage, I don't want to like that. That is like a fun detail. That's also a hook that would be good to explore, but we don't want to be doing that right away because what we want to do is look at how that might affect the gameplay. That's just the aesthetic representation of how we would want to do this maldometer. But a really quick thing you can do is just put some hearts here or some other container or whatever. This is like his sanity, right? And so every time one of these post holes or a deck panel or something or a joist gets destroyed, then his sanity goes down until eventually you lose the game because his sanity got too low. So that's actually really easy to implement, right? That's just like a few if statements. I've already implemented it just to see how does the game play when there is some concept of sanity, right, that gets affected by post holes getting destroyed or any parts of the deck getting destroyed. So what I want to do is just in this stream, I just want to show you what that looks like. And then you can kind of make your own judgment about what sort of direction the design should go and what kind of problems this might surface, right? So we're gonna just kind of play the game as one normally would, and we're also gonna kind of try and use that sort of cheapo, cheating kind of strategy, where every time an enemy starts to attack one of these post holes, right, we will then put a post hole out here to kind of as a buffer, right, and we'll see how much of that we can actually do before it starts to get overwhelming, right? So that's what we're going to do. What I noticed, because I had like one playthrough, I noticed that it didn't take very long before I started to mald. Okay? And now, and not just mauled in like a small kind of, trivial way, but like seriously, I was malding. And I lost the game pretty quickly. So I'm going to get this one, fire rate area turret. That's the aspirational thing to get, will be that particular turret. Just because it's so overpowered, or it can get really overpowered if you're smart. So here we go. Gonna do this, and now I can put a panel on that next turn. So, this actually becomes another kind of interesting. You could have another card in here where it's firepower depends on the number of incomplete paneled sections or joisted sections. That would be kind of interesting way to play the game. So something where like you have to build a lot, like a large number. Okay, so I'm gonna skip that for now. Something where you've got to do, oh cool, I've got 3 and 4, so I can do a deck panel and I can do a turret this turn. That's cool. All right. But yeah, if there was something where you get a bonus, like the turret bonus comes from incomplete joisted sections, gosh, that would be kind of interesting. Like the largest number of incomplete joisted sections. And so then you're kind of constantly, you would have to like maintain a deck that's got these like a large space of incomplete sections. That would just be kind of interesting. I might put that in the game. So anyway, you can see now, and we'll try and do like an area there so we get that area turret. This actually kind of turned out nicely. Kind of better than I would have expected, actually. So that's good. But you can see that I've got some post holes now that are starting to take damage. And you recall that the way that we want to try to fix that problem, I suppose, so I am going to put down more turrets, but I'm also going to start to do that cheat strategy where I put some post holes on the outside to kind of start absorbing some of that damage, right? And eventually, just due to the way this is, I'm going to start losing a bunch of these, and then they're going to get attacked and their health is going to go down, and it's going to be a bummer. But that's just kind of how the game gets played. So okay. So health goes down. I mean, and genuinely, what am I to expect, right? The game is supposed to get more difficult. It's supposed to have this ramp up in terms of difficulty anyway. And it's just going to kind of be natural for that to happen. So I have to be careful, I guess, about... I think I'm going to put another turret down. But my point is that as you kind of start to build this deck more and more and more, these exposed areas start getting more and more attacks, and it's kind of hard to avoid, but you're going to start malding. It's just it's natural to it. So things that get destroyed, you know, I can't prevent all the damage. I try to prevent all the damage, but as you'll see, there's more and more guys that are coming after me on every wave, and so it gets really, really difficult to prevent all that damage, or at least that's what I notice. And eventually I'm going to hit a point where I start malding, right? But for now, actually, I'm not doing too poorly. But the malding thing does it kind of helps to prevent that strategy. It kind of stops that strategy. I guess I could place more turrets too. But now I can get this deck panel. I might actually have like not too terrible of a playthrough here. We'll see, because if I can do this, then I can get this bigger bonus, this fire rate area turret. I can put that down, and then I can really start having it shoot a bunch of stuff. So that could really help me out. And then if I had some different turrets to kind of balance it out, different area turrets, then I could really start to kind of build. What I really want to have is like, you have a big sectioned panel like this, and then there's just this huge number of, like there's, 6 different buildings I could put on there, and I could get some kind of a big bonus from all of those. And those cards are actually in this deck here. So if that were actually the case, that could end up being really quite valuable for me. So, but yeah, you see now that I'm a little bit more exposed. I'm wanting to expand, and if I place too many, there eventually comes a point where I just can't really defend this well enough. I need to start kind of expanding into some of these bigger bonuses. If I don't do that, then I'm just going to succumb to very large numbers of these guys that come at me. And so it's basically like, yeah, okay, so some of these are going to get destroyed, right? Because I can't stop these guys. See, I just lost a heart. I just started malding, right? Now, okay, see, I'm malding. I lost, let's see, I lost that one, right? And so I'm malding because of that. That's actually was one of the, I think I lost one of my turrets because of it. So I lost a heart, or I started malding. And it's kind of up to various individuals, like how much you want to allow malding, or like how much malding you want in the game. See, and then now because I put these post holes there and I use them as these defensive structures, and I have no way to repair them, when I lose them, I'm definitely going to start malding, that's just the way that it is. And so I can try to build some of these newer things, but I still need to get more of these turrets. I can do this, right? I can kind of forestall the inevitable, I suppose. But it isn't the greatest strategy, because all this is really doing is it's just, one thing I'm noticing here as well is you can continue to push this out, right? But there's eventually going to come a point where you'll push it so far out that it'll hit the range of your firepower, right? The range of your player's gun. Because you imagine that, like, maybe I just, every time one of these takes damage, I keep placing more post holes, more post holes, kind of as a defense, as much as I can before I, like, straight up run out of energy, right? Like that, it's a strategy that you can use, but eventually it becomes self-defeating, because there'll come a point where you can't, you have to place them so far out that you can't even shoot far enough to defend them, right? And so then you're guaranteed to lose them. And with this malding mechanic in place, where if you lose a section of the deck, that becomes an even bigger problem, because for every one of those things that you can't defend, you're definitely going to mald, and then you're definitely going to, like, run out of health, or you'll reach, like, midlife crisis status, and you'll just completely, you'll lose. So I guess what I'm saying is, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show you that I think the malding things fixes that problem. It makes it so that it doesn't completely invalidate this strategy of placing post holes um, around kind of as a defensive bulwark. But what it does do is it makes it so that it's really not like a viable long-term solution. What it does, I think, is it says, okay, well, you can try to do this, right? But eventually you're just going to hit a point. Like, you'll try that for a few turns, but you're not going to be getting any of those key synergies in the game. You're not going to be taking advantage of those big multipliers. And so eventually you're just going to get overwhelmed. Like, go ahead, try it, right? Go ahead, try it. But eventually you're going to have, a post hole out here that's serving as a piece of defensive structure that you can't defend, right? You can't defend it because it's all the way out there. So good luck. It's going to get destroyed and you're going to mauld. So if you're not starting to build things that counteract the malding, that make it more and more difficult for enemies to attack you, then you have no shot at winning. So I guess that's kind of what I want to do. Is it's like I want to make it still be something that you could do, but then I kind of want you, the player, to discover that that's like probably not such a great idea, right? For your own reasons, right? Not some kind of like super, well, hopefully not some super contrived thing, but you're already seeing that with all this extra infrastructure out there, it's getting harder and harder to defend this deck. And so, this, like, the extra post holes doesn't really solve the problem all that well. And now I've got all this stuff here that is just, and see, I lost a bunch of stuff on that last one, so I've really started to mauld, But I guess what I'm saying is, wouldn't it be great if there were something that like gives me some repair capability, right? And possibly early on, so that maybe I can start to gain more of a foothold here. Right now, with the way this is going, it really does seem like the game is particularly difficult to play. So what I think is what I think will counteract a lot of this. Okay, I've got turrets here, right? And a turret, it shoots at a certain rate, but what I want to have is a building that you put down. It's just it's a simple building, something that shows up in the early card draws, and all it is it's just a repair bay. And so if I place it on a single tile, what it does is it grants me one repair. And so maybe what I have is like a little button over here that's like for repairs, right? And it starts off at 0, like you get no repairs, okay? But then if I put a repair bay down, I get a repair. And then I can spend that repair however I want, right? If I want to, I of course would be smart about it, right? As a player, I wouldn't want to spend the repair on like this one, right? I would want to spend it like here, on the most vulnerable stuff. And then maybe there are other events in the game that grant you a repair. Maybe another option too is that you can spend some kind of currency after a wave to buy a certain amount of repairs. The point is that I want there to be something that it doesn't cost energy. So it's separate from this core deck building stuff. It's its own system. I think it needs to be its own system because this currency is already so limited. And I think another reason I want it to be its own system is because I want there to be special kinds of buildings that you can put down that grant you absurdly large numbers of repairs, okay? So this game already has this fire rate area turret, right? Right now, that's my most powerful thing in the game. It's a little bit expensive. I would actually say I could probably knock the cost down a little bit by like maybe 2 of these stone things here. because it would be really great if I could actually play that this turn after just capturing this one piece of stone. Um, that would be great because I think that might start to turn the tide in my favor a little bit. But I can't, right? So um, the game is just a tad overpowered on the enemy side right now. So enemies are a little bit more powerful. I don't really have a great way to like counteract them, right? Because they'll just kind of keep destroying all my post holes and they'll make me mauled. The malding thing I think really did solve that problem of this cheap option now just kind of doesn't really make a lot of sense because all they're going to do is they're just gonna attack more of them and there's going to be more guys coming and sure you can. I mean, maybe I can just try that strategy out some more and see what it gets me. I mean, the way I look at it, I don't think I'm going to get very far because I'm going to have to manually defend all of this stuff. And also, like, as a function of time, the overall area, the surface area of deck that I have to defend from these attacks grows, right? When you're starting out, you're playing like very tight, you could say you're playing tall, right? But as you progress, you start to play wider and wider and wider, which is kind of something that's discussed in the Civilization series, right? Um, I think one of the big problems that the Civilization series and many 4X games have in general is it's really easy to play. In fact, the dominant strategy usually is to just play very wide. And so they keep trying to like find ways to like shoehorn in playing tall, right? And it never really ever quite works because usually the best way to play a game like that is to just like start steamrolling the map and like that's kind of like what you do and so we've all kind of grown accustomed to playing that way. But one thing that I do want you to notice is that as the surface area of this deck increases, right, the number of different, like, if I'm trying to do this cheesy strategy of placing down post holes as a bulwark for my deck, I just run out of energy, right? I eventually just start running out of energy, and now, like, let's see, I placed as many as I reasonably could on this particular turn, but then look, like, I missed this spot, right? And this is actually a really important spot. Thankfully, I've got all these turrets here defending it, but I missed this spot, right? So that kind of sucks. Like, it would have been great to not miss that spot. Now I've got to extra defend that, right? Maybe I can, maybe I can't. Maybe I will mauled, maybe I won't. We'll just have to see. But you can just kind of see that eventually this strategy, and look, I can't even really defend that one, right? So that was kind of stupid to even put that there because I really can't defend it. But you'll notice, like, it's going to be difficult to actually keep all this going. It really is. Yep, see, and I lost. Okay, because there's just a bunch of guys over there, and they just took out. Now it says deck collapsed. That's because I just used the same. I just decided to use the same lose condition. I have not officially programmed in the malding lose condition. Um, I'll put that in. I'll do a malding death at some point in order to make it really playable. I think once I do like the first itch demo of the game, the first like actual people playable version, um, I'm gonna put in I'm gonna have like the Doom guy head that starts malding, and then I'm gonna have the official like midlife crisis, you malded too much, something like that. Death by malding. Uh, I will have that version. But I think just having this in place, you can see that it does solve that problem, right? All of a sudden, just spamming these post holes all over the place is really not a viable solution. If every time you lose a piece of your deck, you start malding, right? You start losing your health. Um, it strongly incentivizes the player to push back and truly properly defend the deck, to keep the deck quote unquote pristine, right? That's really what you want to be doing, is keeping it pristine. The more that you keep it pristine, kind of the better chance you have of lasting longer and longer. So, okay, interesting. Skill issues. The difficulty seems too low at the start and then suddenly too high. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's yeah. What's challenging here is it's very difficult to actually. It's difficult to know. Again, we're dealing with a nebulous design space. I would say that much. We're dealing with a design space that is not. It's not as hard edged as a puzzle game is, right? If I make a puzzle game, I can just say, these are the hard rules, and like this is exactly how stuff happens, and this is exactly the kind of thing that you have to do to solve this puzzle, and there's no other way to solve it. But in a game like this, it's kind of like, well, how do I know what the right amount of quote unquote difficulty is, right? How do I know how much to make the next wave harder and harder and harder? And how do I know in what ways to make that wave harder and harder and harder, right? And the answer is like, I don't have a good answer to that question, because that's a really fuzzy, that kind of question occupies a more continuous design space, I would say. And so all that I can get a sense of as I'm playing, right, my only sort of compass here is this term that a number of game designers throw out, right? And that term is balance, right? So whenever I play, I feel like the game is either balanced too much in one direction or the other. So what do I mean by that? I can feel like the game is too balanced in favor of the player, right? It's too easy to get super powered up and to just completely obliterate any wave of opposition that comes your way, right? It's too easy to do that. So it's too much in favor of the player, right? I can feel that the game is too balanced in favor, or is too like lopsided in favor of the enemy. It's too hard. The enemies get better before you ever get a chance to build up your base and make any interesting strategic decisions. And so now it's imbalanced that way. And I guess all I'm saying is, how do you, when you're designing this thing, right? At any moment in time, I can just try to tweak the balance. There's like all these different levers that I can pull to try and tweak the balance, right? I could just make the player's projectile do more damage. Well, why don't I pull that lever, right? I could make it so that the turrets shoot a little bit faster. Okay, that's a lever that I could pull, right? I could reduce the cost of some of the more advanced buildings. I could pull that lever. I could, on and on and on. There's a large number of things that I can do to try to rebalance the game back towards a place that I think is more balanced, right? And so why don't I do those smaller tweaks instead of what I'm doing, which is to introduce even more gameplay elements, right? Even more strategies, right? Why am I doing that instead of, why am I introducing more instead of just trying to balance it out, right? Why introduce this concept of repair instead of just saying, oh, well, the player's more powerful now? Or the enemies, or, there's fewer enemies on every wave, right? Maybe like every 2 waves, I get 1 more enemy, right? And I guess what I want to go for, the reason I'm doing that, the reason I think that's a good idea is because I want it to be possible to play the game at its strategically at its hardest setting. I want there to almost always be a way to win the game even when there's insanely difficult opposition against you, because then what I can do is I can just later on I can just contrive towards the end I can just contrive a bunch of difficulty settings to kind of flatten the curve, right? Just make the waves a little bit easier. An easy setting, a medium setting, a hard setting, and all that does is it just puts a few like modifiers on the enemies, and then problem solved. But what I would like to do is see if it's possible to rebalance the game back in favor of the player by introducing new gameplay elements, right? By introducing this concept of a repair. Can I actually accomplish that, right? So what kind of what kind of new gameplay elements, what kind of new strategic choices can I introduce into the game that maybe allow it at its current settings to be winnable or to allow you to get much further along, right? What can I introduce that would do that, right? Because I think the very last kind of thing that I want to do is just simply reduce the difficulty and say, okay, now it's too balanced in favor of the enemy. And then it kind of gets to be this like really nitpicky kind of a thing where I'm just like, oh, well, maybe if I reduce the cost of this thing by this much and that much. I honestly don't think that I necessarily want the game to be all that balanced. And by that I mean like, I want to go for is I want it to feel kind of imbalanced both ways, if that makes sense. I want it to feel like the enemies are both at the same time totally overwhelming, but I also want it to feel like with the right number of different strategic decisions, you can not only counteract that, but you can completely like blow it into the stratosphere, right? By making the right strategic choices. And so I think the only way to make that possible is to start introducing more and more of those interesting strategic choices into the game. And one of those would be the repair bay concept, or this concept of repairs. So that's what I'm aiming at. And yeah, maybe there comes a point where I've put so many of these things in the game that I just have no choice. But I'm just like, look, like I've got to reduce the difficulty. Like it gets too hard too fast. That's fair. In that case, it's like, okay, we did everything that we could. But what I want is to make it so that I want to counteract that randomly placing post hole strategy, because that's not something that the reason I don't want people to be doing that is I want them to have more of like a long-term strategic vision for how they're going to build and expand this deck. I want those to be the kinds of decisions that they're making. I don't want them to be making these really easy kind of like, you don't have to think very much, just plop crap down decisions. So that's kind of why. But yeah, I designed this little repair bay icon for repair bays. And what I want is for this to follow essentially the same design language as the rest of the game. This is my Omni turret. Oh, actually, I don't want to move where that is. I want this to follow the rest of the game's design language, which is to say that like if it's blue, then its bonus comes from the area of the panel that it's sitting on. If it's purple or pinkish, then it comes from the width of the panel that it's sitting on. And if it's red, it comes from the height of the panel that it's sitting on. So a really, really tall panel, right? If I put this on like a panel that's 3 tall, then on every turn I will get 3 repairs, right? And then I get to spend those however I want. And then that way, if I'm using the repairs to just repair my deck on every wave, instead of having to like try and put post holes all around it, you know, that kind of thing. Um, I think we will find that that is going to be a much better option um, in terms of strategy, right? So now I'm thinking, okay, well, I better, you know, I'm going to go for this card and I'm going to save up resources for this card and I'm going to put that down. And now I'm going to get this bonus, right? And then I'm going to use that bonus to kind of propel me even further along to where I could start using some of these area cards. I could start building like a really high area panel. There are other ones too, like, and I want all of these. What I really want is for all of these to um, behave synergistically. I want them to really. So if this is like, you know, high fire rate, this is like fire hose, then this is like slow. It applies like a slow effect, a certain radius around it. And so that slow effect is magnified by the area of the panel that it's sitting on. So you can imagine if you put one of these on a really, really large panel, then for a long distance, it's going to apply a really big slow effect on these guys. And so you could use these two things in conjunction with one another on the same panel, and it would provide a really big defensive bonus, right? So I want there to be options like that where you're really starting to create these synergies between the different kinds of things that you can place down. So hopefully that makes sense. If there's any other questions about that. So I've got the ability to. So now we're actually just gonna do some programming for a bit. One thing I want to do is I probably just want to have some concept of repair, right? So I want to start to put in what I should do is actually have another kind of menu, like I said, like maybe like right here, that's got all of the repairs. I suppose I could put it here, but I don't want to confuse it with this because these are all the things that cost something. So I don't really want to put it here, and I also don't have much space here. So I think I want to have like another one of these tabs that comes up here, and this is just like the number of repair. These are like your special buildings. So maybe there's like certain special things that you only get. They're like consumables. You know what I mean? You only get one of them, and they go in here. So like repairs would go here. You get a certain number of repairs. So I'm gonna draw something similar to that. So what I'm gonna do is just get to my code that draws that part. So let's see what that is. Enter in menu, start left top. Okay. Interesting. Oh, I see what this is doing. Okay, that's, yeah. Oh, cool. I could actually, I could pull this into a function here. So I'm basically already doing this kind of thing with the end turn menu. So what I can do is I could just take this code here, this C++ code, and I could just pull it up into a function. And then all that I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in like the left top of it, right? And then I'll just have it draw from that point. So what I'm thinking is this right here will just become its own function. So I'll do that. And then, maybe you can do different like colors for it as well. I don't I guess I can pass that in, but what is this also? Okay, yeah, so the icon, yeah, so some of these actually have rotation. That's kind of one of the cooler things about it too, is like, maybe I can have like a little screwdriver, right? It's just like repair, and the screwdriver kind of like wiggles a little bit. I don't know, just something to show you that you have your mouse cursor over it, right? And then all it's going to do is it's just going to have that plus the number of repairs that you have. I might even just put the number of repairs up in that kind of top corner, sort of UI with all the other stuff, like along with your health. And the reason for that is, I think that'll become it'll become one of the things that you notice kind of right from the bat, because it's in the top corner there. It'll make a lot of sense because it'll have like a little kind of repair thing. And so then when you click on the repair icon, and you do these repairs, you'll actually see the repair count go down. So I think that makes some sense. Yeah, some kind of repair card or some ability to repair, I think, is one of those things that players are going to go for right away. Just because it is so essential. And then a lot of your decisions around how you're going to build your deck will depend on how many, how it is that you're able to repair it. At some point, I'm also going to put in, maybe there's like an automated repair building where if I place it on a panel, then it just automatically repairs. It always repairs everything that's on that panel or that's tied to that panel. So like all post holes, all buildings, all that stuff. That's kind of another option, but I digress. I'm just gonna pull this up into a function. And this is something that I do a lot when I program. So a lot of times, I keep saying this a bunch, but a lot of times when I program, I just first I write the code that will do the thing, and then when it comes time to reuse it, I just move it up into a function, or I just kind of shuffle it around. So I would just say draw, I don't know, bottom tab menu, right? That's kind of what these things are. It's like a little bottom tab menu. And I'm literally like copy pasting my code that I used earlier, right? That worked. Does this scope have oh, we don't want that one. I'm just copy pasting my code that I had earlier, and then I'm just figuring out what should I do to, what do I need to pass in so that I can make this useful. I'm just kind of making it slightly more generic than it was previously, right? Because I've already got this code that's drawing that bottom end turn menu, right? So I'm just going to start molding it to do what I need it to do. So first thing, I need to pass in my game render command structure, which is just a big high level structure that has a bunch of different useful things for the renderer. Next thing, I'm going to need the game's texture map. That's something that I've covered in previous streams as well, which is basically just a way of associating different sprite rectangles with unique identifiers that I then pass to my own custom graphics pipeline. So I got to have that. Looks like I also need to have, see, the thing is I might not even need, maybe I need texture map. And I'm actually going to change the name of this thing here so it's not called that because it's not being used in some other place. So I am doing a little bit of name changing on this stuff just so that, okay, end turn icon, right? So this is going to need to be passed in as a separate kind of unique identifier. So I actually don't think I'm going to pass in texture map. I think I'm going to just pass in pointers to the different kinds of parts of that texture map that are then used to draw that menu. So so U32 star 3x3. What I call a 3x3 is just one of these things here. So this is a 3x3 right here, right? That's a 3x3. And I use these 3x3s, these tiled 3x3s, I use them to construct pretty much every little piece of user interface that's in the game, right? So I'm just going to pass in a pointer to that 3x3. And then I'm going to pass in, and so now when I go through here, I actually just need to replace all of these things with 3x3, right? So we're going to do that. And then I have a name for that one. Also, that kind of makes this thing a little bit more customizable, because I can have it do all the same drawing, but then I just pass in a different 3x3, right? And it has a slightly different color to it, which is kind of cool. So here we go. That 3x3. Okay, and then that is different. So that's separate. And then so we're kind of getting through here. But yeah, I took this thing that was what I'm doing is I'm taking really specific code, right? Let's see if I even have the design in here. I do have the design. I'm taking really specific code that I've used to just draw only this, right? One function that I've used to draw this thing. And then what I'm doing is I'm kind of making it not like super abstract, not like template metaprogramming astronaut in outer space abstract, but just like a little more abstract. And by that I mean just I'm elevating it to the level of a function. It's just a little more abstract. There's just a little bit more that's generic about it, which means like maybe what I can do is I can pass in a different 3x3 for the background here, different text here, right? So I can have it say repair instead of end turn. And I can pass in a different icon here. So I can pass in like a little icon to like something like a wrench, right? So the player knows, okay. But essentially it looks the same, right? It's the same like logic, but I'm just mixing and matching different elements. And the way that you do that is just you just make a function. Like most of this stuff actually, like most of programming is just functions and structs. Don't let anybody tell you anything else. Everything else is BS. So I'm just going to pass in some functions and structs, and I'm basically taking a function that was really specific and I'm elevating it to the level of something a little bit more generic. So we're going to do that. Let's see, I think I need to pass in, U32 for the identifier for the end turn icon. Oh, no, wait, I'll just call it icon texture ID. So we need that. What else do we need? We need the starting left top position. So that's a vector 2. I'm just going to call it start left top. Okay, what else do we need? We need a V2 for the card tile size and side in pixels. I'm going to pass that in. And notice also I'm going to have to start changing the names of some of these things in this function, right? So I'm just going to call this like start left top, like that. This looks good. This looks good. I'm going to actually I'm going to hard code the card background Z layer because that's basically always the same, so I don't really want to pass it in. Maybe I will. Fine, I'll pass it in. Background Z layer, just cause. Okay, so that really covers like a good portion of these drawing functions that I'm calling, because that push textured rectangle is actually a function that I built for my own graphics pipeline for my games. So you just have to assume that that abstraction like works, right? And believe me, it does because I made it. So here you go. What are we missing anything? What are we doing here? So far, no issues that I can see. Anything that we're missing? Oh yeah, so here I need to change. I need to swap this out for my icon texture ID, right? So let's do that. So that's working. And then menu icon Z layer. I think what it is it's just like 1 plus. Don't quote me on this. So my game engine does Z layers as well. So it sorts all the layers. +1. Let's see. Oh, and then the rotation. So I'm gonna have to pass in a floating point. This is another thing too, is my rendering pipeline that I set up for these kinds of like game prototypes. Also for the game that I launched, Moose Solutions, it has the ability to rotate two-dimensional sprites. So I put that in. That just is like a thing that you can do. And so I can pass that into this function here. So I'm actually I need to just come up with a name, though. I'll call it icon rotation. And I will put it next to the icon stuff. R32 icon rotation. And if some of this starts to like wig you out because like you've seen other kinds of programming tutorials where they don't just throw a bunch of parameters in a function, like I don't know what to tell you because most of the time, like people are grossly overthinking how their functions are set up. You know, the thing is, a lot of the time you're just going to be kind of tossing a bunch of parameters into a function, and that's just kind of what you do. You know, and every once in a while you'll notice that this parameter and that parameter tend to be passed together quite a lot. So maybe I'll bring those together into a struct. Or maybe I need to come up with like a custom return type struct so I can bundle data together, right? That can solve a lot of problems. But like, just kind of be dumb here and just like stuff a bunch of things into the function signature, because truth is, like, that's just what's needed, you know? So I'm going to call this icon rotation. Okay. And this is a bunch of stuff that basically just, this is just deciding, like, what kind of, like, text size we want to render for this thing. Sorry, I will, if you can hear that, that is my partner singing to our dogs. So we have 2 German Shepherds. Okay, so then now we've got like some kind of, my game engine also has this like a text string representation. So I've got a few things that cover strings in there. And so I use that for the end turn text that you see. But in this case, I want you to be able to pass in a custom string, right? I want you to be able to pass in some kind of structure that says something about a string. And then you can pass in a number of different ones. So in this case, I have this thing called end turn text, right? So what is that? Well, let's go look it up. Because it's part of my big ass my big ass global variable that you're not supposed to use. That's just all the game state. Game state. This big old thing that's like several hundred lines of stuff. But so it's a thing called a text character lookup array, right? So all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make that be like a pointer to one of those, And we're going to pass that in too. So 41. And we're just going to call that title text, right? So in this case, it's going to be title text. And instead of a dot, because I've just changed it to a pointer, right? I went from having direct access to the struct to having like indirect access. I've passed a pointer to it, so I've got to change it to pointer dereference. And in this case, this thing wants a pointer. So in this case, I will just pass it directly because I've already got a pointer. So I'm going to do that. So that should be what do I call it? Generifying. There are a few things that are maybe like a little that in this function that are still specific to it. For example, end turn menu width. I don't know what that is, but let's see what the deal is with that. Where do I have to pass that in? Yeah. Okay. I guess I have to pass that in too. I'll pass it in here. I'll just call it menu width. And then, okay. Oh, and then that's interesting. So that's the starting point as well. So we have that start left top. So we're going to do that as well. Just start left top dot x. Title text count, spacing width, menu width, character width. I'm just using kind of my naked eye to see which things are, oh, no wait, I've already defined that. Okay. The thing is, half this stuff the compiler is just going to fish out for you, so it like really doesn't matter. I just like to kind of preempt a ton of the different compiler errors, because if I just try and build it, I'm probably going to get compile errors, which is fine. So here we have to use the start left top. So I'm just kind of going over it with the naked eye just to see if there's anything that I can catch that needs to change to be a little bit more generic, so that I can just pass that in, right? And then all that I'm going to change, and this is really important, this is kind of how you sort of slowly build from the ground up. I'm not going to add anything new. I'm just going to call the function that I created, this thing here. I'm just going to call it. And I'm going to have it do what I was previously doing without a function, what I was previously doing with just straight line code. So I'm just going to replace the straight line code with a slightly more generic function that covers, right, what that would also be able to cover the additional things that I want to do, but just with different parameters passed in. So instead of passing in end turn text, instead of passing an icon to like the little like you'll see, instead of passing this thing in, like end turn and this thing and then this 3x3, I'm passing in the word repair, and I'm passing in a little wrench, and then maybe the same backing thing, but maybe not. Maybe like a different color. Maybe it's like, maybe I really like this white, or maybe I really like this blue. It doesn't matter. I have some of that flexibility. So what I'm saying is, like, if I can get the function to work for the one case, then I could certainly get it to work for the other things that I might desire to pass in. And this is how you sort of build up the sort of function vocabulary, or like the drawing vocabulary of a quote unquote game engine, right? A game engine is just what you get when you have enough of these sorts of like Lego blocks. That's really all it is. Nothing special, if you think about it. So now I'm going to call this thing, right? And so I got to figure out where is that stuff called. Right here, it's called. So we're going to do that. And so what I'll do is I'll just comment out this stuff here, right? I'm just going to comment that out. And now I'm just going to call my function. So instead of calling all the other stuff, I'm just going to call the same. I'm just going to call the function that I created using this code here, right? So I took all this code, pulled it up into a function. I put a little girdle on it. I just I sucked it up, pulled it up, and I decided let's make it a little bit more reusable. Now all I got to do is I just got to pass in the stuff. The same stuff that was being used here, right? So this is my 3x3. The icon texture ID that I want to use is going to be texture map. What icon do I want to use? I want to use this end turn icon. That's what we call it. But notice that I kind of waited to do all of this, to do this abstraction, right? I didn't start with the abstraction. I just started with the straight line code, knowing that I could just move it around and reuse it later. And that's generally how I prefer to operate, because this is kind of something where, something Casey Muratori says where you're always kind of sitting with the ground truth of the matter. You're sort of always dealing with, what's the other? There's a really great talk between him and the Primogen about, so they call, I guess, like, what is Primogen? He calls it one-dimensional programming. I like thinking that way, which is just saying, like, I'm just going to do what's in front of me. You know, what's directly in front of me. And I'm not going to try to think too far ahead, right? Okay, so this is going to be end turn menu width. And I've got card tile side and pixels. I think I've got card background layer, but let's see. Z layer. Where is that defined? Maybe it doesn't get defined until later. This is all the like rendering. Okay, maybe it doesn't. Interesting. I guess it doesn't get defined until later. Oh wait, where's this? This is in. Oh, it gets defined. Okay, it's at the top of the render function. Okay. So all good. We have that. We have access to that variable. And then the title text that I want to use is this thing here. So, and we've got to do an ampersand there. And turn text, because that turns it into a pointer. Because by its own, if I dereference it off of game state, then it's just going to get me the actual copy of the struct. But if I put this ampersand here, it gets me a pointer to it, so then I can pass it by reference. What do we got? Only 2? Wow. Okay, so line 76, got a problem. Yeah, okay, that sounds fine. Because remember, we're not passing in end turn start left top, we're passing in. Okay, and then also 122. What's the problem? End turn menu start left top. Oh, so this is also just start left top .y. Okay. All right, no more compile issues. Okay, great. And then just to confirm, this still has the same behavior, right? I could still like click over it. You know, I could still run around and shoot things. So very good. All good. All things that we want, right? So, great. So now then I can just like do, now that I've got this function, right? this draw bottom tab menu function, I can then get rid of all this stuff, right? And okay, so there it is right there. That's the end turn icon. So now I basically, I'm going to end the stream soon, but I've basically got a thing that I can now use to draw the next menu, right? Because all I got to do is I just got to take this thing here. First of all, I got to make some new art. So I've got to make an icon for like the little wrench, or like a better icon for the little wrench. Maybe not this, but like, you know, just like something that's like a little slightly better better icon. Maybe something like this doesn't quite look how, maybe this, something like this. So I just need to make an icon like that, and then put that here. I'll use that icon, and then just swap out the text, swap out the background, but basically call the same function, right? That's really all I have to do is just call the same function with slightly different stuff, and it will then draw that menu option where I want it to go, and I'll have it. So I've built up a vocabulary, and I've kind of made a function out of this thing that I was previously using, made it slightly more abstract, and I'm kind of building these little like modular building blocks that draw out kind of the core things that are in the game. So with that, I will leave you for this stream. So if there's any questions at the moment, I'd be happy to answer them. All right, it's been fun. I appreciate you. We'll talk soon.